was 25 when it happened.
He was cleaning out the concrete ribbon type mixer.
Before starting the cleanout process, John was supposed to shut off the power at the breaker.
Press the operator switch to make sure the power was off, and then climb inside to clean it.
This same day, Rich, who was John's co-worker, had already shut off the power at the main breaker.
So he went over and pulled the main disconnect for the electric.
And before he could go tell John that he had already shut off the power, he got a phone call and had to go take his phone call.
So John came around to perform his usual cleaning process. He hit the breaker for the machine, but instead of turning the power off, he re-energized it.
He went into the mixer without pushing the operating switch first to make sure the power was off.
While John was inside, Rich came back from his phone call and picked up where he left off.
So he comes over to the operating switch, turns it to make sure it's not going to work, and here's John screaming inside the concrete mixer.
And immediately went to the breaker to shut off the power, but it was too late.
At this point, the EMS came to pick up John and had taken him into the hospital, but unfortunately, 4 hours later, there was no good news and John had died.
You've heard stories like this before. People who have lost a finger, an arm, or maybe someone like John who lost his life on the job. When you're dealing with huge machinery that utilizes huge amounts of energy, lives are on the line. As a machine operator, you may think that lockout tagout doesn't affect you. You just use the machines, you don't service them. But what if you did service the machine? If you were that maintenance person, if you were John, wouldn't you want to make sure that there were safeguards in place to ensure that the machine didn't start up with you inside it? In this program, we will discuss the following: the importance of lockout-tagout procedures, an overview of lockout-tagout procedures, and your role in preventing hazardous energy releases.
Why is it so important to have these lockout-tagout procedures?
The simple answer is that lockout-tagout procedures prevent injuries and save lives. When any machinery or electrical equipment accidentally or unexpectedly starts, it can cause injury. Today in America, an estimated 21 workers will be severely injured on the job due to the release of hazardous energy. These energies include mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, thermal, gravity, or other energies utilized by machines in manufacturing. Injuries due to hazardous energy tend to be more severe than others. These 21 workers will suffer from lacerations, fractures, and amputations. What's even worse is that an additional 15 workers will die because someone failed to follow proper lockout-tagout procedures. Even worse than that, all of these accidents were preventable. Every day you are surrounded by machines that utilize tremendous amounts of energy to stamp, press, mold, cut, drill, heat, and process raw materials into the goods you manufacture. As a machine operator, you know that machines require a certain level of maintenance to keep operations running smooth. You also know that equipment can sometimes break down. Simply put, machines need to be maintained and repaired. Often, repairs can't be done without personnel working beyond the machine guards and other safeguards in place to protect you from injury. This means that maintenance personnel must place themselves in the direct path of the hazardous energy used to manufacture products. However, turning a machine off is not enough to protect against the release of hazardous energy. Another employee could come along and unknowingly turn a machine on while maintenance personnel are working on it. You may not be able to see anyone in the machine. They may be behind it or just out of sight. Because of this, the hazardous energy used to power the machine must be isolated. That's where lockout-tagout comes in. Lockout-tagout is a system of safety procedures used to prevent the equipment from being accidentally started while servicing is taking place. Lockout refers to locks used as a physical barrier to prevent switches from being activated or valves from being turned. Tagout refers to written warnings alerting you to the fact that work is being performed on a specific piece of equipment and therefore you should not try to operate it.
I don't perform lockout-tagout, so why is it important for me to know the procedures?
When dealing with hazardous energy, even if you don't perform lockout-tagout, you should be aware of the procedures involved. Knowledge is power, after all, and an overview of the lockout-tagout process will help you understand just how carefully energy must be managed in order to be rendered safe. The Lockout Tagout standard breaks industrial workers into 3 groups: authorized, affected, and other employees. Authorized personnel are the only workers permitted to perform lockout tagout procedures. They are given locking and tagging devices and possess proper training with regard to energy sources and their locations and the procedures to ensure these sources are properly locked, blocked, and tagged out. Affected personnel work in the area where lockout tagout procedures take place. They do not perform the lockout tagout procedures, but their job is affected by someone locking out their equipment. Machine operators could be classified as affected personnel, for example. There is also a third classification of personnel known as other employees. These people do not work in the production area, but may enter it occasionally. Affected personnel and other employees should be trained to recognize lockout-tagout procedures, understand the purpose of these procedures, and avoid equipment where lockout-tagout is taking place. The first step in the lockout-tagout process is the notification of shutdown. This means that an authorized employee will notify any affected personnel that the machine will be shut down. Once the proper personnel have been notified, the machine is then shut down at the operator's controls, utilizing the proper shutdown protocol for this specific machine. Following the proper protocol helps avoid increased hazards to employees as a result of de-energization. After shutting down the machine at the controls, authorized personnel will proceed to disconnect the machine from all energy sources. In order to do this properly, authorized personnel will review machinery plans and identify all energy sources utilized by the machine they will be working on. Industrial machinery is often powered by more than one energy source. These sources could include electrical, hydraulic, mechanical, chemical, pneumatic, thermal, or gravity. Sometimes these energy sources are not obvious. Although the machine may seem like it is shut down, parts of the machine may possess stored energy. Springs may appear to be at rest, but they may contain stored energy that could pose a danger. Because of this, authorized personnel will want to review the written procedures for each piece of equipment they are shutting down. This will allow them to identify every energy source associated with the machine and disconnect, control, or disperse it. Locks and tags will then be affixed to the energy isolating devices by authorized employees. Each employee is assigned a personal lock as well as tagging materials. The locks are placed on the energy isolating device in a way that assures it remains in the safe or off position, thereby eliminating the possibility of the equipment re-energizing while it is being serviced. Afterward, to further safeguard themselves from injury, authorized personnel will disperse any residual energy the machine may possess. This means that stored energy will be relieved or restrained by grounding, repositioning, blocking, and/or bleeding the system. Next, authorized personnel will try to restart the machine by normal means, utilizing the operator's controls. This is done to verify that all energy sources have indeed been isolated and the machinery is now ready to be worked on. It's important to note that sometimes more than one person will be working on a machine. When this happens, each worker then places his or her personal lock on a hasp on the energy source. This system is called one person, one lock, and it ensures that every worker is accounted for and, in essence, ensures that each employee is accountable for his or her own safety. If a machine has multiple energy sources and requires multiple workers to service it at one time, some facilities may utilize a different lockout-tagout approach. One lock is placed on each energy isolating device. The keys for these locks are then placed in a lockbox. Every employee intending to work on this machine would then take their personal lock and attach it to the lockbox, retaining the key in their own possession. This method should only be used if authorized by your facility, however. An important thing to remember is that only the person who places the lock is allowed to remove it. Authorized personnel are responsible for removing their own locks and tags before equipment is re-energized. The effectiveness of this lockout-tagout program is compromised if locks and tags are left in place after work is completed. Notify your supervisor if any open lock is left on a hasp or if a tag remains on equipment that is working. Some machines, by design, may not be able to be locked out. It is rare, but it can happen. If this does happen, tags are used. Tags don't lock out controls, therefore they can't provide the same level of security that a lock will. There is a system of protocols, however, designed to go along with tags that you should be aware of. Remember that tags are essentially warning devices affixed to energy isolating devices. They don't provide the physical restraint on those devices that is provided by a lock. When a tag is attached to an energy isolating means, it is not to be removed without authorization, and it is never to be bypassed, ignored, or otherwise defeated. tags must be legible and understandable by all employees. Tags must be securely attached to energy isolating devices so that they cannot be detached accidentally during use. Tags may evoke a false sense of security. They are only one part of an overall energy control program. When a tag is attached to an energy isolating device, it is not to be removed except by the person who attached it. Tags and their means of attachment must be made of materials that will withstand the environmental conditions encountered in the workplace. If you find a tag on the floor, contact your supervisor immediately. Do not attempt to start up any machine if you are not clear on the situation. Just because you can't see a person working on a machine doesn't mean they're not there. An authorized worker could be behind the equipment, and if you attempt to start the machine, there could be dire results. Outside contractors may be a part of your facility's everyday operations. If that is the case, it is important to realize that contractors working within your facility are required to follow proper lockout-tagout procedures as well. The contractor may have their own procedures, but they must be at least as safe as your facility's lockout-tagout procedure. If there are any differences between the contractor's procedures and your facility's, the contractor is required to utilize your facility's established protocol. As affected personnel, you won't be performing lockout-tagout procedures, but you do have certain responsibilities to uphold. When it comes to lockout-tagout, as an affected employee, your job responsibilities are pretty simple. Anytime you see a lock or a tag in place on an energy-isolating device, leave it alone. Don't try to operate the equipment. Also, remember to stay clear of areas where lockout-tagout procedures are taking place, and do not attempt to help authorized personnel with their work. Once the servicing of the machinery is complete, you will be told that it's safe to use the equipment again.
As an affected employee, what can I do to prevent accidents due to hazardous energy?
Good question, and the overall answer is this. Recognize when a task requires lockout-tagout to be performed. You have to learn to draw a line between normal machine tasks and maintenance procedures. A typical part of your job may be to unjam or clean a machine while utilizing the proper safeguards. Never alter or bypass machine guards, however. Any activity that would require you to bypass machine guards or put any part of your body near the point of operation requires authorized personnel who can then follow proper lockout-tagout procedures. Never reach into a machine, even when the controls are in the off or safe position. There could be potentially dangerous residual energy trapped in parts like hydraulics and springs. If your job requires you to unjam a machine, talk with your supervisor about any tools or devices you could use that would keep your hands and body safely out of the path of any energy source, yet allow you to reach beyond the machine guards to fix the problem. If the machine you're operating is in need of service, contact authorized personnel. Do not leave until authorized personnel are on the scene. This way, you can communicate any problems to them. This will in turn assist them with their lockout-tagout procedures. Also, never interfere with locks or any other devices used to block energy. And if you ever find yourself in a situation that you are unsure of, do not try to power up the equipment. Contact your supervisor immediately with any questions or concerns. Remember, someone's life could be on the line. In this video, we have learned the importance of lockout-tagout. We have discussed proper lockout-tagout procedures, what your responsibility is as affected personnel, and your role in preventing hazardous energy releases. The machinery you use on a daily basis wields tremendous amounts of energy that could severely injure a person, if not kill them. That's why it's so important to understand the safeguards put in place to protect you and your coworkers from injury. Lockout-tagout affects everyone. Only when every employee is aware of the importance of lockout-tagout procedures can we avoid hearing more stories like John in Riches.